What's up, everyone? Jim and Joshua here to talk to you in full spoilerish detail about Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. So, if you haven't seen the movie yet, bookmark this, come back, check it out when you have, because again, we're going to full spoilers about what we liked about the movie, what didn't quite work for us, and more. So, Joshua, you are the official reviewer of this movie for us, for IGN. Tell the folks, in a nutshell, what you liked about the film.
I will first start by saying that I've been a lifelong Harry Potter fan. I've read all the books. I've watched all the movies, probably a few too many times. Whereas you are a normal person. You're like a muggle,
I
right?
am a muggle. I'm like those undecided voters in swing states. You know?
Don't bring that up. Come on, man.
I've seen all the movies, but I haven't read the
I've
books.
decided my wizard house and everything. I'm Hufflepuff for life. So watching this movie, obviously I was very excited to essentially get this Harry Potter prequel following Newt Scamander, and I was not too impressed with him and the other characters, but the beasts, like what the movie's promising, they were fantastic.
Okay.
Every time that happened, I felt the magic of the wizarding world again, but the plot was a little too clunky for me, and the characters didn't grip me as much as Harry and friends did at Hogwarts.
Yeah, I agree with you, actually. I think I like the movie a little less than you, and I don't want to sound like a pisser about it, but as somebody who saw all the Harry Potter movies and liked pretty much all of them, I didn't feel as invested at the end of this particular journey as I did with any of the characters, Harry, Hermione, Ron, all of them, in any of the Harry Potter films. And there was something emotional. There was an emotional disconnect for me, but I did like the creature designs. I thought the movie was well cast, even if all the performances didn't quite work. They did have a hell of an ensemble. I like the look of the movie. It's tough to go wrong when you're dressed in the 1920s garb and with the haircuts and everything. It looks pretty cool. I like basically a jazz age Harry Potter movie, if you will. Yes, I know it's not really a Harry Potter movie, but
Harry Potter universe.
Wizarding World universe, right? J.K. Rowling did write this.
Her first screenplay.
Her first screenplay, and I think that for people who are, they just love anything and everything Potterverse, if you will. I think they'll find much to enjoy in the movie, but perhaps they might be straining to find some of that or to justify why they like it as much as they do. And for those of us who either only know it from the movies or sort of have a passing understanding of it, or if you're just in off the street, I don't know if it will grip you quite as much as the Harry Potter films did. There's something about following the journey of these children growing up and going to school, and it was a bit more relatable and more emotional and just sort of charming than the plot of this movie, which is a bit more meandering. Let's talk a bit about the plot before we get into the characters. Now, the plot itself, if we could break it down, is basically Newt Scamander, the Magizoologist.
Magizoologist,
wow,
actually.
Excuse me.
That double O doesn't make zoo, because there would have to be 3 O's to be zoologist.
The more you learn, the more you learn. I just got school. This is like my own Hogwarts right here.
Or Ilvermorny, the American school.
Oh, yes. All right, so tell the folks then about sort of what the plot reveals about how it expands the wizarding world. Where now it is set in America, and there's a whole new side of this J.K. Rowling creation that we haven't seen before. So
it's sort of weird because Newt comes and we find out he's there to release a Thunderbird in Arizona, but he doesn't even make it to Arizona, which was essentially that's his goal. His driving force is the movie is that's what he wants to do. But he gets sidetracked in New York City when things escape his case. Then they have to go and round them up and make new friends and stop an evil plot and all that. So it kind of quickly sort of sprawls under control. But I thought that was one of the, as far as the plot goes, one of the things that was really bothering me was that I didn't understand what the stakes were of the movie and what was driving the movie forward. Like, what did the characters want? It was very kind of like murky, and it was kind of moving scene to scene, and some of them were really entertaining, and some of them were like a little too dark, but it wasn't really sure I wasn't really sure how they all connected. Certainly not like Harry Potter, where it's like this little kid and he's going into this world, and you're kind of on that journey with him, and someone wants to kill him. You know, you got
and he's
it.
learning more about his past and
Yes.
everything. I have to say, it was very difficult for me to try to get a bead on Newt Scamander and what it was actually that was driving him, even his personality. We can talk a little bit more in detail about that in a minute, but did you like the way that they kind of set up 1920s New York and as a backdrop for this new sort of Wizarding World story? It is interesting to see it kind of taken out of a more just out of England and out of Hogwarts and put it into that larger world.
The magic we saw in the other movies were generally not in a public space. It was like this castle off in the countryside, and we did have the Ministry of Magic, but that was just like beneath the ground. But in this movie, you walk into the Woolworth building, and it just transforms into the MACUSA headquarters.
Yeah.
And then you there was that the speakeasy, the Goblin Speakeasy.
That was one of my favorite parts.
Yeah,
actually, was the
Ron
Goblin
Perlman's Goblin with weird fingers.
and I love that he got his name on it, Scamander, Mr. Scamander.
Mr. Scamander. Yeah. So those things I thought were really cool. Although I still didn't feel like it mined like the sort of the personality and the culture and just the diversity and the people of New York
the
enough.
vibrancy of it, even of the Jazz Age New York too. It should have felt. I think maybe that's why that speakeasy scene is one of the more charming elements of the movie, is because they're showing you they're mashing up those two worlds. All right, if we're going to do 1920s New York, let's do that and let's throw some magic into it. Otherwise, they're just sort of walking around, and it could have been any backdrop of any place. What did you think of sort of the? Let's talk about these new characters that come into play here. We do have. I guess let's just start with Newt Scamander himself. Eddie Redmayne, Oscar winner. I gotta say, I don't know if Newt Scamander is a worthy sort of follow-up to Harry Potter, if you will, if he is a strong enough hero, both on paper and just as a character, as how he's presented in this movie, to succeed, or I guess in this case, precede Harry Potter. What are your overall thoughts now that we've seen the film in its entirety? What did you think of Newt Scamander as the sort of new anchor, the new hero of this story, the saga?
Yeah, well, I suppose what they're going for was sort of he's like this awkward Hufflepuff dork, and he kind of like his feet aren't quite right. He kind of shuffles along when he's trying to run and everything, and I think that they're trying to make that endearing about him, but he was lacking any actual endearing, engaging qualities. You know what I mean? Like
no
Harry,
real discernible personality.
Yeah, he was a little too reserved. Obviously, he's a great actor. He won an Oscar. He knows what he's doing. But I just think maybe just the material and the direction weren't servicing him very well, because I wasn't like on his side and like really into it. And
I didn't feel invested in him.
Especially not compared to Harry, who is this little kid who gets beat up by his older cousin, and then he gets whisked off to this it's magical school, and you learn so much about him, and like you're right there for his struggles, and he's someone who you wanna see succeed, and you know what they want, and you're afraid for the world outside around him of like Voldemort coming after him. But for Newt, I was just like, what's going on with this guy? And I don't know.
To me, I wasn't a fan of how Eddie Redmayne portrayed the character. I couldn't quite understand what he as an actor was going for, what his intent was, if you will. Like, it really seemed to me like Hugh Grant doing a Rain Man impersonation. There was something just off about the character. There was no real personality, no real charm, and frankly, it was just kind of dull. Like, whenever he was on screen, I wasn't really invested in it. If he was on screen with another character, I found my eye going to the other character. And as somebody, and we can talk more about this in a little bit, but as somebody who's the new anchor to this saga, that to me that's a misstep, because you need to feel like, what happens next to this character? And I could really give a crap. Like, I didn't find him, and I didn't think they did enough to sort of establish what it was that he really wanted to do, not only in this story, but in general. Like, you get the sense of, Harry, what the stakes are for him and what he wants to do. Newt just wants to get his beasts back, put them in the case, and take one of them to Arizona. I will say I did like the Thunderbird. I'm a big fan of giant bird monsters, so I did like that the Thunderbird finally got his due on the big screen.
Are there a lot of giant bird monsters that you can be a
There
fan
actually are, and that's a
giant
conversation for
bird
another time.
monsters? Okay.
Yeah, there actually are from cryptozoological thing. Now we're going down a rabbit hole. Don't even take me there. What did you think of Eddie's performance, though? Is new. You did touch on a little bit.
I agree with what pretty much everything you said of that. Yeah, he just doesn't quite pull off whatever he's going for.
Yeah.
He's not someone who like captures you and you're like kind of on his side. And I didn't really understand his motivation for doing anything. And I feel like all the sort of like on paper it probably sounded really good. He's like this awkward scientist who's not really good with people, but he's amazing with these incredible creatures that he's collected. But it just wasn't there.
I've heard a few people kind of compare him to Matt Smith's Doctor from Doctor Who, but I don't know. Let's talk about some of the other characters, because this movie does have a great ensemble. Now let's talk about whether or not they were actually put to good use in this story. Let's start with the two new female leads of this, the sisters Tina and Queenie.
Yeah. I loved Queenie. I thought
Yeah.
she actually came into the movie a little too late. It wasn't because
She was a bit of a burst of energy
yes,
when it
which
needed it.
and I think that was the main draw of her, of that she was this burst of energy, and she was this sort of, she was very like sugary and but had a sense of. I don't know. It was so funny to see her go into people's like minds like on accident. That was like giving me a chuckle where the rest of the movie wasn't really doing much for me.
She reminded me kind of like a Betty Boop type character,
Okay.
where she's kind of like, "Oh, jeez, Misty," that kind of thing. Like she almost
Yeah.
sounded like Harley Quinn in a way.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But the whole going into people's heads, at a certain point, that started to disturb me. I'm like, it's like keep your hands to yourself kind
Like
of thing.
invasion of privacy?
Like, for the love of God, how many times do you have to be warned? Please stop
Yeah.
doing that to people.
I will say this: the scripting, like the dialogue, wasn't as sharp as it could have been, and I think
Yeah.
I would blame that of just sort of of a repetition of things. Like they must have
Yeah.
said, "Oh, we need to obliviate that Muggle," talking about
Yeah.
Jacob like 10 times before they
Yeah.
actually explained what that meant.
Right.
And then like dropping weird amounts of exposition to like when they explained what a squib was, like in this
Yeah.
really dramatic scene. Then Colin Farrell stops to explain what he's talking about when he says squib. And it just didn't quite
Yeah,
work.
some expo dumps there.
Yeah.
Now, Tina, I have to say, Catherine Waterston is a really talented actress. I've seen her in a number of films now. She's still relatively new to the scene compared to some of the actors in this movie. But I have to say, Tina, I still like Newt. I don't quite get where they're coming from or going to, and I certainly didn't buy whatever sort of romance that they were trying to set up come the end. Queenie and Jacob, I bought that a little bit more. It was a little too sitcom-y of, cute hot chick and fat schlubby guy kind of thing. It's a little too King of Queens. Yeah. But Tina, I don't know. There was something about that character just didn't. I feel like they didn't give her really enough to do, and she's just, there were so many scenes where she was just standing there looking worried. Like she didn't really have anything to like sink her teeth into.
And she was like the worst kind of person in that she betrayed them. Was it 3 times? 3 times?
Yeah.
Of trying to turn them in to get her credibility back, to get her job
She wants
back.
to be a cop again. kind of
Yeah,
thing.
and it was like, I think one was like 2/3 of the way into the movie is when she did it like for the second time.
Yeah.
And it was like, haven't you spent the whole movie befriending these people? And she even has that line early on where she says, "We're not trying to poison you," but she is trying to like turn them in,
Yeah.
like
Well,
cash them in to get her
If you're
job
going to be
back.
a character like that, then maybe don't play it sweet. Maybe be the dashing rogue. Be kind of like more like the Lando type of like, I don't know, can I trust this person?
Yeah.
Can I find them charming?
She was a bit too muted.
Yeah, muted is a really good word. That describes a lot of this movie to me. Muted, the color palette, the performances, the overall tone, the energy level of it.
Yeah.
Muted. There you go. Good. If we still had the bell, I would have hit it right then. Let's talk about Jacob. Now, he, I thought, like Queenie, brought some needed energy to the movie. However, I did find the character kind of a cliche character. You know, he's like, I'm a chubby guy. And, oh, geez, you know, like they were trying to do like it was almost like they were trying to do like the Abbott and Costello kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what did you think of Jacob and his bakery dreams too?
I thought he was there to be like he's like the gateway character, right? Like
Yeah,
he's
the eyes
us
of the
going
audience,
to this
yeah.
magical world, but he wasn't doing that enough. A lot of his reactions to what he was seeing was just that, of just a face of like looking at
Yeah,
things, like
a
when the
lot
strudel
of
was being
green
made
screen
and
acting in this movie.
yeah, of the dishes flying down on the table, and he's just like looking, and then they would show more magic happen, and then show more magic happen, and it's like, are you gonna say anything? Are you gonna like
Yeah.
give us a reaction and be like, oh my god, this is fantastic, how did you do that? Like
Right.
how anyone, I know he got bit by some creature, so maybe he was a little loopy, but still,
Yeah.
he didn't do the job of reacting to how a person would react, especially a character who's him.
Well,
who's
that's also
sort of,
the story, though, didn't give him those moments. I will say, as to his reactions, I did find a lot of the movie to be marred by green screen acting, meaning those are the actors. Okay, just react to something that's not there, or look at a tennis ball and pretend it's a monster. And it's like, there was a lot of that. Even there were some scenes with Newt. There's that scene at the end where he goes to like pat the Thunderbird, and it just looked, I know it's fake, but it looked like literally they were just trying to animate something to wherever his hand landed. It just nothing felt tactile.
right.
You know? Now, but do you think these new characters, along with Newt, are they strong enough to sort of build that emotional basis for going forward with, 4 more movies? There, are Queenie and Jacob, could they be another Hermione and Ron? Are they too muted for
I
that?
feel like they wanted them to be a Ron and Hermione, but I'm not quite sure they got it. Also, that's completely like different romance, right? Whereas
Yeah.
Queenie and Jacob hit it off right when they met each other, whereas Ron and Hermione spent 7 books, 8 movies getting to the point where they're even gonna kiss.
Right,
so,
right.
But as far as being enraptured in their romance, not really. I kind of enjoyed them in the few scenes that they were kind of like together, like buddied up. Although then there was that weird thing where like they were like, oh, we need a help, or oh yes, Queenie's like, we should go help. And then
Yeah.
Jacob says, like, no, like, stay here. And it's like, what? You're not going to go help your friends?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
such a weird thing to happen. And yeah, then they just stay off camera for the rest.
I have
Until
to
the
say,
end.
a lot of the problems with the movie ultimately are on paper, and I know it sounds blasphemous to criticize something that was written by J.K. Rowling, but I felt like there were a lot of issues that could have been solved in this movie.
How dare you, Jim.
With a rewrite. I'm just saying.
No, I think actually, I can't remember the name of who did it, but I could have sworn I read that someone did take like a second pass at the script to help her.
okay.
But I think you're right that it could have used some more help. And also the director, like David Yates, I've thought ever since he came on with Order of the Phoenix, and he did the rest of the Harry Potter movies and this one, and he's allegedly going to do the rest of the Fantastic Beasts. Ever since he came on, I thought the movies gained this sort of sense of like visual stiffness where they lacked the style of like Prisoner of Azkaban by
Yeah.
Alfonso Cuarón, or The Goblet of Fire. Like those, I think of the emotions those made me feel, and like just the visual like wonder on the screen.
There's
Whereas
more
when
of a
he took
painterly
over,
aspect to him.
yeah, when he took over, I feel like it lost everything. It was almost just like kind of like Watchmen, where it's just like, here's this scene, then this scene, and these bits of dialogue, and it lost the magic for me.
Very interesting.
And that's how I felt about Fantastic Beasts too. It was like, didn't quite conjure anything for me.
You're gonna run out of magical puns. Come on. You still have sorcery and sorceress.
I'll work
There's all
them
sorts
in.
of- yeah. Let's talk about the villains of the piece. I think it was a little difficult to figure out exactly. Okay, so what did the villains really want in the movie? And obviously, we're going to get to the big spoiler about the villain reveal in a little bit, but let's talk first of all about sort of the Makusa. Am I saying that right? Makusa?
Makusa?
Makusa.
You're thinking like Big Mac. 'cause
Yeah.
in American.
Actually,
Big
I
Mac.
think I was thinking the Michael Makusa. I think that's what I was thinking of. But let's talk about them and their sort of role in the movie, in the way that the humans, the Nomages, are sort of becoming aware that there's magic in the world. Did you buy this sort of that kind of arc that they were trying to do with the movie? Of like, we're just trying to keep our profile low and not be found out.
I don't think that it was like present enough in the movie for, again, like it goes back to the problem of I don't feel what the stakes are.
Yeah.
And I get that they're worried about it, but it was never like at the forefront of that. Like, we need to keep magic a secret and everything. Because
Yeah.
the way they were doing it was in such a totalitarian way, made me actually side with like the other characters. They
Right,
want to be like, no, magic needs to be out and free and everyone can get along. And
Although I will say I did kind of like that there was maybe a little bit of moral ambiguity there. I mean, I like Colin Farrell as an actor. I liked him in this movie. Let's talk about Ezra Miller as well as Credence. And that's an interesting character. Turns out to be sort of the MacGuffin that Percival Graves is after for most of the movie. But he is an incredibly tragic character.
Yeah.
But there's also tonally some big shifts there. Talk a little. I know you mentioned this in your review. Talk about
Yeah.
sort of Credence.
I
and-
almost saw him as sort of a dark parallel to Harry Potter. I know people say Voldemort is a dark parallel to Harry Potter because they're very similar, but he's a foster child who, whereas Harry got to go express his magic at
Yeah.
Hogwarts, Credence was forced to suppress it. And then it's almost sort of like an after-school lesson, right? Of like,
Yeah.
don't hide what makes you special, you know. And so here's what happens when you do. It creates this dark,
Buck up, Bullcut.
this
Come on.
obscural creature inside of him. Is it obscural? Obscurus?
Yeah.
Obscural? Yeah. And that's what happens. So it turns him into this very tragic figure. It's like being emotionally and physically abused
That
by his.
was jarring. I
Yes.
mean, for a movie that ostensibly is trying to appeal to kids, these jarring moments of actual, real physical abuse, child abuse.
Yeah.
I mean, the markings on his hand, and she brings out the belt. And
Yeah,
the
and
stepmother. yeah.
Harry Potter had all that stuff, but Harry Potter sort of like effortlessly and very seamlessly merged like the really dark stuff with a bit of
Yeah.
like humor, and it was dark humor, but it had this great tone to it. And here, I would say they're not exactly marketing this to children. I think it's more of an all ages thing because the franchise has grown up along with all the people who've read it and who
Yeah.
were Harry Potter fans. So I feel like this is sort of like the adult world of Harry Potter.
I don't think that's a smart move, though. Just to, making a movie that is. They need to appeal to children. I mean, it's just the
Yeah.
fact of it's a box office fact. You have to those repeat
I think
audiences and everything.
it's all ages. I just don't think it's marketed squarely at children. I think they're trying to want to make it for everybody. But you're right that it is super dark. But there are moments of levity, almost like too light, where he's like doing that funny mating dance for the
then-
lava rhino, and then and then in the next scene, it's like murder, child abuse.
Secret meetings in alleyways and
Yes.
everything. Let's what the hell? Let's dive in and talk about the big reveal. Okay, this is I think the thing we've all been waiting for. So Gellert Grindelwald, or as I like to call him, Sarah Michelle Gellar Griswold.
Why you guys go and ruin it like that,
I
Jim?
know. Well, Grindelwald is in the movie. We knew that Johnny Depp was playing him. Johnny Depp cameos. Why don't you explain to people how Grindelwald is introduced in the movie?
Well, first we see him at his base, Nuremberg, whatever. I forget how to say it. But yeah, in the beginning, his fortress.
Like the prologue.
Yeah, which was kind of cool, like a great show of power of these 5 wizards marching up to this fortress.
You only see him from behind, but you know he's blonde. He's got that kind of 20s
and he
style
kills
haircut.
all of them, and just
Yeah.
it's like, whoa, that's crazy. And then the sort of newsreels take over, and we get the fact that he is at large, he is recruiting power like other wizards. He's causing unrest in the magical community. He disappeared, so that's kind of our hint that he's hiding somewhere. And then we meet Percival Graves, who ends up being Grindelwald in disguise, which is the big crazy thing at the end of the movie. I didn't see that coming. There was obviously the Deathly Hallows, which he gives to Credence, and that's sort of like your first big hint.
And the haircut too, though.
And
they
the
have the
haircut.
same haircut.
Yeah, this is true. And the Deathly Hallows, we know, is his symbol. If you remember from the Deathly Hallows movie, where we learn about Dumbledore's history, and Grindelwald is actually his best friend. And if you really read into it, his young
Lover.
gay wizard lover, and that was what made Dumbledore so famous
Right.
and gave him the notoriety of him being essentially the greatest living wizard.
And he name checks Dumbledore in one
yes.
scene with Newt as well.
Yeah, he said, "What is Dumbledore see in you? What makes you so special?
Right.
It's also funny, just weird side note, is that Percival Graves is Colin Farrell's character, the fake name that Grindelwald creates. But Dumbledore's name, his full name, is Albus Wulfric Percival Brian Dumbledore. So he actually took one of Dumbledore's names
Interesting.
and put it in there. I don't know. I guess as maybe sort of a nod to it. Maybe that should have been another hint that he
Right.
was. So I guess you could kind of see it coming if you really wanted to.
Do-
but
does-
here's the thing: how did he do that without Polyjuice Potion? I don't know. So he's
Well, also,
he's had a
too-
charm over him the whole movie, and no one saw
and he's
through it.
had, yeah, he's surrounded by all these other wizards. Nobody quite caught on. And do you think his scenes hold up once you already know the twist? You look back on
I'll
things
have
that
to go
Percival
watch it
was
again.
doing. Like, does that really make sense, or is it just sort of is he doing things that would be out of character if it was when you look at it knowing it's Grindelwald?
Well, I guess it makes sense that once he meets Newt and sees what Newt's up to, he's like, let's have him killed immediately.
Yeah.
Which I thought was, whoa, that's crazy that he, even if you're the top cop of the Makusa, you can just have 2 people killed without a trial, I guess,
Yeah.
in that weird magical
That
death
seemed
chamber.
an incredibly ornate way to whack somebody,
Yeah,
right?
it's
For
like let them
people
enjoy
with-
a happy memory before they die. Kind of nice, but also really weird.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
very slow as that like magical goop comes up.
What
to
did you
eat them.
think of even though he's only in it for a moment, what did you think of Johnny Depp as Grindelwald?
He needs to speak his lines a little more clearly.
Yeah.
I actually could not figure out what he said, and we asked producer David Heyman, and he told us, I'm actually going to pull it out just to be sure, because he mumbled something, and he really is mumbling it, to
To
Newt at the end, and he says, shall we die just a little? Shall we die just a little?
Yeah.
So, and I think what David Heyman said is that he's sort of hinting at something to come. We don't know, we're not supposed to understand what he means. He's sort of like hinting at something.
Yeah.
And originally I actually heard that it was a completely different line. It was something along the lines of, you think you can hold me, but then Johnny...
You owe me $20. Yeah.
Then Johnny Depp ad-libbed that in there, I think because he knew what was going on with the character and where the character's journey would go in later movies. So I think he just threw that in there as a little thing.
What did you think of Johnny in that one scene? To me, it pulled me out of it a little bit because I'm like, there's Johnny Depp, and he's doing his Johnny Depp thing with he's the kind of actor that seems to work from the outside in. It kind of pulled me out of it a little bit. I wonder if it could have been better with a less well-known actor, but I don't know. It's a little too late now, obviously.
No, I thought it was fine. It's really hard to judge on such little material. Again, going back to the scripting, I'm a little upset that he's essentially the biggest, he's like Voldemort, essentially.
Yeah.
He's like that powerful, and then he lets himself get caught by the
easily.
Makusa pretty easily and puts up no fight and just gets taken in. I almost wonder if it's one of those, what has now become a cliche of he wants to be caught.
Yeah.
Like the Joker, in
Yeah.
The Dark Knight.
I want to lock him up in the MC.
Yeah, and we'll have a
God, I
scene
hope
of him
they
in
don't
a
do that.
transparent jail cell of
Yeah.
some sort, and someone will be interrogating him.
What did you think of the look? He's got pretty much like no eyebrows, or they're dyed very blonde, and his teeth are kind of messed up again. And
He just kind of looked weird, yeah. I
yeah,
don't know.
I don't know.
He was only in it for like 90 seconds.
Yeah, but knowing it, would you have liked it more if that news hadn't broken, that Johnny
Oh,
Depp?
100%.
Yeah.
If I didn't know that, I feel like it would have been just a huge, oh my God. But you can,
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I didn't see the twist coming that it was Percival, but the fact that I knew that Grindelwald was going to be there in the flesh did ruin it a little bit for me.
Yeah.
But I will say this, as a hardcore Harry Potter fan who's very excited just about learning more about the lore, this movie didn't really do it for me, but I am excited to learn more about this era in the Harry Potter universe and getting to see more of what Grindelwald's rise to power was like and what his sort of regime and sort of
Right.
his reign of terror was like. I think that's very exciting. He is the driving force, Grindelwald is the driving force of what has me interested to come back for a sequel. Okay. And I'm hoping eventually in movie 5, the 5th Fantastic Beasts movie, or whatever they decide to call it, we eventually get to see the epic battle, only hinted at in the books, of Dumbledore in his prime versus Grindelwald.
Right. Well, we want to hear, what did you guys think of the Grindelwald reveal, Johnny Depp, all that? Let us know in the comments. Now that you've talked about looking ahead to what's coming up, let's do that. We've already kind of talked about how the way Newt didn't quite grab us. What do they need to do going forward? Now that we know Grindelwald is there, we know what that brings with it. We know young Dumbledore is coming to this saga at some point. What do they have to do to win over those of us who weren't exactly enamored of this movie,
Well, I
and
think
hold on to the people that did like this film?
the first is some behind-the-scenes changes that need to happen. J.K. Rowling needs, I think, a co-writer, like a buddy, where they can work, they can hash the story out. No, it's not. I mean, it's like it was her first ever screenplay, and it got made into a motion.
Major motion
picture, a blockbuster. Like most people don't get that, but she obviously gets it because she's J.K. Rowling. But I really do think pairing her with a smart co-writer who can take what she wants to do, she can still write it, along with the person and hash it out, and it'll be the best. Because writing for a book is very different than writing for the screen.
Yeah, the internal.
Yeah, and if you go and read, even just a script and compare it to the book, which I've kind of done a couple times, you can see actually how smart they were and how there's a lot of things that just aren't said out loud and they leave to the actors. And the scripts...
Show, don't tell.
Yeah, the scripts before have a lot of great nuance to them. So I think they really need that. I know David Yates said he's going to direct all 5 of these, but I'd really like for them to bring in some new blood,
Some fresh set of eyes at this point.
I think that would be great to get a director with like a great sense of style to carry the franchise
When you get
forward.
later in the series, should it be called like 4-tastic Beasts, 5-tastic Beasts? Are they going to go like the Fast and Furious route?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I don't know if Fantastic Beasts has the name value that like Harry Potter does. I wonder if they'll find a way to change the title to something else. Because I think we originally assumed it was going to, every title in this movie franchise was going to be Fantastic Beast and blah, blah, blah. Just like it was Harry Potter and blah, blah, blah. I wonder if they might change it.
That would be kind of good, yeah. I agree with you on that one. And do you think... at what point in this series do you think we'll get to the Grindelwald and Dumbledore stuff? Are they going to make us wait till like movie 3, movie 4?
I feel like that's something you end on, like movie 5. Well, that seems so far away.
That's like 2022 or something at that point, right?
Bringing in a stronger villain, I think, is very important. Like a clear forces of antagonism up against Newt. And I think they said that actually the next one's in Paris.
Yeah.
So whatever's going on there, whatever brings him to Paris and whatever Fantastic Beasts, put a clear sense of like danger and something he needs to do to overcome it.
Do we know in the Paris one, it's going to be... Do we know how many years later it's set? Or is
I haven't said yet.
If it's still in the 20s, it'd be kind of cool to see jazz age Paris as well, because there was a lot of stuff going on.
You just want a Harry Potter jazz movie.
I know, right? But if they go to the 30s, and it's then you start seeing the rise of fascism in World War II, and it could kind of tie in more directly with somebody like a Grindelwald.
Yeah.
And the fact that they get blue-eyed, I think he's blue-eyed in this one. I know Johnny Depp has brown eyes, but he looked pretty Aryan, so maybe they'll tie it into that.
Yeah.
What about, do you think that Queenie and Jacob and Tina, are they along for the ride the whole time? And also, Newt. Do we need Newt in all 5 movies, or could they conceivably write him out?
I feel like if they saw, the movie's already gotten like great reviews. A lot of people like it more than I do. So I feel like they actually are going to stick with Newt. Although if they really wanted to, I think they could find a new focal character and have Newt sort of like come in, or create sort of like a, I hate to say this, Harry Potter cinematic universe where like this one stars Newt, the next one stars a different magical icon that we know from the Harry Potter universe, and then the next one stars someone else, and then they put them all together for 4 to take on Grindelwald. Like at the end, like Grindelwald's like the Thanos.
He's fanficking this. Well, that sounds pretty cool.
They could do that, but I think it'll be Newt, and I think he'll go to Paris. I think meet a new group of allies and magical figures, maybe some familiar faces from Harry Potter lore.
Maybe the Lestrange girl is over there too.
Maybe
they do hint at his past relationship.
And then I feel like the characters from this movie might show up sort of later in the movie to help out or something.
Yeah. Well, he brings his baked goods all the way over.
I want to get the secret croissant recipe for my shop.
Well, guys, that'll do it for what we thought about Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. We, of course, want to hear what you have to say, so leave your comments below. You can reach us on Twitter at Joshua Yale, @Jim Vejvoda. For all things Wizarding World, Harry Potter, Newt Scamander, Fantastic Beasts, all that jazz. Jazz. Keep it here on IGN.